My internet can be wonky.
Did you kick the girls off?
I hope my kid knows better than to. Okay, Mary
Yes,
Beth.
I did get the message. Facebook says that we are live.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will run our open like we do, because we like to do that. And hang on, there we go. With the dogs in the background. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Sci-Fi Distilled. We have Roy and Ross joining us from their show. Roy's show, Tie-Dye Sci-Fi of the 60s, 50s and 60s, right?
And 70s.
Right. So tonight we are going to talk about the probably the best sequel ever made to a movie, which was The Empire Strikes Back. Arguably, some might say the better movie of the three, or the best movie of the three. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Welcome. So first of all, do we want to do our drink and our toast?
Let's do our drink because I always forget before we get.
And while he's pulling up the drink, so Roy, how very dare you have other friends besides us? Can you introduce us to Ross and tell us how you met and tell us about Ross's new role on Tie-Dye Sci-Fi?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Ross and I go back way back. We go back to probably 1981, actually 1981, 1982. Joe Metz, who you've met, who is also another very close friend of mine back from grade school, from like the 5th grade, one of my oldest friends, is Ross's cousin. So they're cousins, and that's how actually I became to know Ross back in the day. And we've done a lot of different things together in high school, and we actually used to do movies. We used to do the Super 8 movies. Ross used to write his own and film them, and what was it? Intervorzed, right, Ross?
Yeah, that was one of them. Yeah,
that was one of them.
Yeah.
Joe used to make movies, and we used to do things like that together. And then over the years, unfortunately, we kind of drifted. And the last time I actually had seen Ross was probably like 1986.
Oh.
So we kind of reconnected a couple of years ago on the internet, and then with everything, I reached out to him about being a host on the show and, doing a Friday show, and he did, and it worked, and the chemistry was really great. And a lot of people were just saying, about Ross being on and, hoping that he was going to continue. And one show led to about 6. And here we are. So Ross is my permanent Friday night host on Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. So I'm very happy about that.
Speaking of chemistry, here's our drink. Called the Hoth, 1.5 ounces of vodka and a 1/2 ounce of white, or says white cream to mint. I couldn't find white. It only comes in green, and you put it over crushed ice. Of course, that's already on our page. So I have that. That's what I'm drinking. Basically, It's rocket fuel.
I have Wampa water.
Here's anybody.
I have a Bespin Fizz.
It comes from a little
The more
Wampa.
we drink, the more interesting the conversation gets. At least in our minds.
We'll use the Force to kind of use telepathy amongst all 4 of us.
Okay, so what is so special about this film? Obviously, Star Wars is huge. I was still of age, young age when it came out, so I was still blown away by the film as I was the first one. Certainly, when we started seeing the previews, I mean, we just couldn't get enough Star Wars back then. So, I mean, it was, what's it going to be? What's going to happen? So tell us your thoughts.
It's interesting too, Mike. The 3 of us, and Mary Beth, I would say, is the younger of the 4 of us. And Mike, you graduated in 84.
85.
Oh, 85. Okay. Yeah. So you've got it first, Ross. You're the old guy.
I'm the elder statesman. Well, I'll tell you that I looked forward to no other movie like I look forward to The Empire Strikes Back. For a full year before it came out, I had constructed a little countdown calendar that had you could put numbers in the calendar, and every day, first thing I did when I got up is I put I counted down, and I could go downstairs and say, "Hey, Mom, it's this many days till The Empire Strikes Back opens." So I was just like so pumped for this. And you got to understand, well, you do understand. You were there the first time around. If you were what, a year younger than us, I guess. 85. You said you graduated.
I graduated high school in 85. Yeah.
Right. We're 84 graduates.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you had to wait 3 years. Yeah. Even the action figures after the first film, you had to wait for the action figures. They didn't expect it to be the success it was. But do you remember that if you saved up enough of those little proof of purchases, you could send them in and get a Boba Fett before the movie came out?
Got that.
Yeah. So did I. So all we had, there was that awful Star Wars holiday special on Thanksgiving.
You can watch that on YouTube if you really want to.
But the best part, I mean, it was terrible. But the only redeeming part was that cartoon that had Boba Fett, and we were like all pumped. Who's this Boba Fett? So we got the action figure, and we had the countdown calendar, and there we had to sit until May 21st.
And then we were robbed because the Boba Fett was supposed to fire his rocket off of his back, and then they glued it in at the last minute because there was afraid some kid was going to choke on it,
lose his eye. Yeah.
All the horror stories when we were kids.
And I remember looking at it and thinking, I bet you could look. It's pretty clear that they had it already tooled to fire, and they just glued it in. And I was really thinking, I bet you I could figure a way to get
it out.
But I was too afraid to destroy the one Boba Fett I had. So.
It's funny, Ross, you mentioned about that Thanksgiving special. I remember because we would go down to my grandparents. They lived in Florida, and we would drive down there. I remember going down there, and I was watching Battlestar Galactica. It was the episode The Young Lords where Starbuck actually crashes, and then it's Audrey Landers was actually in that episode. Sorry, Mike, I know you had a pass with her.
You're giving me PTSD.
But that was on, and then they also did the Star Wars special, and there was like so much hype because we were the kids. I mean, the movie had came out the year before, and everybody was excited to see the same characters, and then the story was just trash. It was so bad. And then there was the talk about this second movie coming out, and I was talking about Joe Metz earlier, and I was busting Joe's chops about this just recently when we were talking on the phone last week. So the novelization had come out, and I believe it was by Alan Dean Foster, and that had come out prior to the movie. So, of course, what a lot of people would do is they would read, the novelization to get an idea of what was actually going to happen in the movie. And then he's like, I remember I was in my 8th grade science class, and he's like, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. And I'm like, what? He goes, oh, I don't know if you want to know this, but I'm going to, and I'm like, what is it? And then, and then it comes out, spoiler alert, folks, 40 years ago, that, Darth Vader is possibly Luke Skywalker's father. And it was like, oh, and it's just that moment,
I couldn't wait. What was
I remember I know. Yeah, I never read those because I purposely didn't want to know what happened. And I did read. Speaking of Alan Dean Foster, I did read Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which came out right after Star Wars, which obviously had a different timeline or something than because he was definitely, or he wasn't. Lucas didn't clue him in that Luke and Leia were brother and sister because there was clearly a romantic thing going on.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of creepy now. But beyond that, the book is really good. It's a really good kind of standalone story. So if you ever feel like reading it, I recommend that book.
Yeah, from what I understand, it was kind of the default story. Lucas said to Alan Dean Foster, "Come up with a sequel in case Star Wars didn't make money, that we can make an affordable follow-up." So they didn't go with. I don't think at that point he knew that Leia was Luke's sister. There was something in the air about Luke having a twin sister, but I don't think he had formulated the idea yet that Leia would. And
that's what's really interesting. A lot of the backstory that was conceived for this movie kind of happened later on. It was after Star Wars. I mean, I don't think originally he was conceiving to have Vader be Luke's father too. I
from
think
the start, I don't think
start.
Probably not in the first film,
But it worked out with the verbiage because when Luke is talking to Ben and he's saying that almost like you lied to me, and he goes, well, it's kind of like a technicality where he's saying he died.
A certain point of view,
yeah. So it was a way to get around that. So it's interesting how everything fit into the world of Star Wars as we know it and know it today.
Yeah. So we can go through the movie. So it opens it opens again on Vader's ship, and he's launching these probes out throughout the galaxy to find them. And one ends up on the frozen planet of Hoth. And the next scene is Luke on his tauntaun, which apparently smell very bad according to Han Solo, and worse on the inside than the outside. And then Luke sees this meteorite fall, and he goes to investigate, and gets attacked by the Wampa. Now, if you ever watch any of the stuff that was cut, the Wampa was going to have a much bigger role in the film. In fact, there was a whole scene where it's like he's running through the walls, like there's caves within the caves of the rebel base, and then at the end when the Empire comes, these things are coming out of the wall and start attacking people. So I thought that was interesting. I guess they just felt it wasn't necessary for the story. It probably was, but they did shoot a lot of it. So it's on I think the DVD or the Blu-ray, whatever, you can watch.
It didn't. They decided the Wampa didn't look that good, and it didn't. This footage is available. You can find it on YouTube. You can see it. The Wampa did not look that good, but it kind of goes to, like, they were pretty clever, but not clever, but they made some good judgment calls. I'm going to say Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote it, George and Lawrence took over it. The original screenwriter's name was Leah Brackett. She wrote it. She came up with the concept of Hoth, the concept of Dagobah, and the concept of Bespin, and that's about all they kept. All the rest of their stuff they tossed. But the Wampa, it didn't look right. So Lawrence Kasdan and director Irvin Kershner, oh my God, they were genius. Like, what they did was brilliant, and they made some really, really smart moves. They knew, for Yoda especially, they knew that if that puppet didn't look right, they didn't have a movie, because he was pivotal. They had to have him. The Wampa didn't look right, they could cut it, no problem. But Yoda had to be exactly right. And to this day, people argue that the Yoda puppet from Empire looks a gazillion times better than the Yoda puppet in, was it Clones? Attack of the Clones? Where did Yoda first pop up? That puppet doesn't look right. It doesn't look like Yoda.
He was CGI.
CGI'd it, yeah.
But he was a puppet too. They did.
He was a puppet when they first started doing it in Empire, and I think Frank Oz did an amazing job with that. I mean, you believe that Yoda is alive, and you believe Yoda is the Yoda master. I mean, one of the pivotal scenes for me, and well, actually, I don't want to jump ahead, so I'll come back to that. But in regards to Yoda,
well, so then obviously Luke is in the cave with the Wampa, and apparently he was saving him for a later meal. I don't know. He's frozen. I always thought it was weird. He was frozen upside down and his feet were like encased in ice. And I'm like, how did the Wampa accomplish that?
Yeah, how did they get him up there?
Because even if it was a puddle of water, it was upside down, and I never understood how he stuck his feet in there long enough.
You know what I always thought, Mike? I always thought that he essentially just grabbed him, and he was such a big character that he just took him and he just threw him up, and he caught in the ledge. I mean,
a candle, to soften the ice.
But it was clearly looked like his feet were encased in ice, like it was water, and then he stuck his feet in there and it froze. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, granted, suspension of disbelief. But as a kid, I'm going, how did he manage that?
Mark Hamill. So his escape
physics.
From there,
it's not Star Wars. No physics. Sorry.
So his escape from there, Mark Hamill was kind of mad about it.
So then we see that he's gained a little bit of force power because he was able to summon his sword and get out of that. And then of course he like another thing I understood is why didn't he just kill the Wampa and stay in the cave?
Yeah.
But
no, that's what Mark was mad about. Mark Hamill was on TV saying he was mad when he found out he cut the Wampa's arm off. He's like, no, it was just like a hungry bear. All I had to do was scare it. Luke would never kill. Like, he just was really adamant about that. So I don't think he would, for sure.
See, that would be me. Yeah.
The thing, if it's me or him, sorry, dude.
They kind of undid it with the special editions though, because then they give you a really good shot of the Wampa. Then it's like they put the Wampa back in, not to the extent that you mentioned where he's rampaging through the rebel base. Yeah. But you got too long a shot of the Wampa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're not talking about Lucas's re-edits.
Good, because that'll take up the whole show. Otherwise,
yeah.
The rants.
We don't want to talk about that.
You've seen the trailer for The Empire Strikes Back, the original trailer, though.
Right.
Remember where C-3PO rips that tag off the door? You know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was actually supposed to be a Wampa in that room.
Right.
And they cut it from the film.
Right.
It took me years to find out about that.
Because they would like walk through the halls. There was like they kind of what they were going to do is like they were going to have scenes where you kind of got something was up, like there would be noise in the wall or something, and they're like, as they were walking through, you'd just kind of see this thing in a shadow, through the ice or something. So they were kind of leaning that something was up going on, but they obviously just cut it all out.
It took me decades to find out what that was about, because I always wondered what happened. Like, where's that scene where 3PO rips the thing off the door? It was only decades later that I found out that's what that was.
A lot of films, the trailers are out long before the final cut is done.
Right.
And we'll see that a lot, where we'll see a scene in a trailer that never shows up in the final cut, and we're like, or look different, what I'm saying? They took a different angle or something. So that's pretty common. In fact, I just noticed, because we're always talking about Star Trek at some point. I was watching Star Trek this morning, was it? And on the end, at the end credits, they'll show like stills from different shows as the end credits roll. And there was a picture that I'm like, what? That was never in any episode. It was like this weird android looking guy in a gray suit with like,
it's like a screen test that they did, or a makeup test for a lighting test. Yeah.
And I never, all the years watching Star Trek, today was the first day I noticed it. I'm like, what's that from?
There's it's funny you're saying that, Mike, because there's one where he's like peeling his face off, and I think it was the guy that played, and I can't think of the actor's name, Lieutenant Hadley. He was the glorified extra that was always at the navigation, Mr. Hadley, because he was always at the navigation station, and I guess he got the name in a piece of the action. All roads do lead back to Star Trek, right?
Yeah,
All right. So I'm going to take a second to say hi. I saw Dennis was here. Chris LaRoche is here. Captain Phil is here. Martin's here. John and Sue, or maybe just the Sue part of John and Sue, are here. Captain Phil was just saying, didn't Mark get injured in Corvette Summit? It wasn't in Corvette Summit. He got injured for real in a real car crash with his own personal vehicle. And he did damage and needed some amount of reconstruction on his face, but that's why he had scars. And so I think they worked the Wampa attack in to explain the scars.
Hey, Phil's asking, Mark Hamill, he did get in an accident. I don't know if it was during Corvette Summer, but
no, it was his own car.
Yeah, I think it was his own car, and it was after that movie, I think, that he got in the accident, and that's why he had the scar. But I think that was after. Was that after Empire, or was that before? Like between Empire and Jedi?
It was between the two movies.
It was between Star Wars and Empire. In there.
Was it
Corvette
Star Wars
Summer was
Empire, or Empire and Jedi?
It was
between
earlier.
Star Wars and Empire.
He was younger. It was earlier. Yeah.
It was. I believe it was right in '77. And in fact, Lucas had told Mark Hamill that if he had died in that car accident, I guess he would have came up with another character to pass on, as far as the Force and everything.
Cold. Yeah, who was it?
Go ahead.
No, was it Annie Potts that was in that with him? Do you rember?
Was it Annie Potts?
It might have been Ross.
Ghostbusters.
Wasn't that just like Ghostbusters? What do you want?
I don't know. Props to Mark Hamill. He carries this movie. He carries Empire. He's alone with a puppet for ads of time, and then he has this massive scene with. You're absolutely right. It was Annie Potts.
Haven't seen it in 40 years.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Corvette Summer since
HBO.
I don't recognize
1980 something.
Wow, that's going back.
Yeah, I mean, it was made in the 70s.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
He was originally cast on 8 Is Enough as the oldest brother.
Mark?
Was he?
Yeah, Mark Hamill, and he was the oldest brother, and then he went and did Star Wars, so they brought in the guy, the other, who I don't know, the actor.
David. Yeah. Grant something.
But it was originally Mark Hamill.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You were talking about, as far as him being alone with Yoda and everything, and to me that was a pivotal scene with when he's trying to get the X-wing out of the swamp and it's buried, because he's using all of his energy and everything, and then there's almost that disbelief where it's going to happen, and then it goes down. And Yoda, even when they're doing the eyes, it just kind of closes, and he's like, and then he goes, he walks away, and he's he's really upset. And then Yoda, this little thing, just brings it up, and then it carries over, and then you got John Williams' music, his score going, and it's like, it's such a majestic scene, and it's a scene where you really find out about how powerful Yoda really is, and it almost gave the believability as well as the credence to this character. And then what happens is, Luke comes back and he's like, I can't believe it. And then Yoda goes, and that is
why you fail.
That is why you
Ross,
fail. I can't
remind us.
do or do not.
Empire lost the Oscar to Fame, didn't it?
Yes, it did, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Because nowadays, if you played Empire, if you played any piece of music, people would know immediately what that was. If I went out in the street and sang "Fame, I'm gonna live forever," people would look at me like I was crazy because they have no idea what that is.
I think they'd look at you crazy for saying either
We
one.
know.
I know that song. Yeah. But yeah, it's not as outrageous as Superman losing to Midnight Express, though. You know, the Giorgio Moroder score.
Yeah.
But you can't win every year, you know.
Well,
Right, when you're John Williams.
there's all kinds of politics. with
There are all
Academy
kinds of
Award.
politics.
So,
Exactly.
you know, you can't just say which one's better or not because there's politics involved. I mean, why did it take Steven Spielberg so long to win something? Clearly, he was blackballed because of stuff that, you know.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah. Well,
I don't really put a lot of stock in
I will die on this hill. John Williams was robbed for Empire.
I don't
Yeah.
argue that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, certainly you should have gotten it, but
Well,
I mean,
just
he
like,
must have a closet full of them by now.
yeah, right. Well, just like we're saying that Empire was the strongest of the sequels. I mean, this may be the strongest of the scores. I mean, this is one of the few film scores where I can listen to it. I put it on, I listen to it from beginning to end, and I don't get fatigued. You know, back in the day, I mean, when these things came out very often, I mean, Empire was a 2-record set. That was really luxurious. But back in the day, you see a single LP of a soundtrack, and you had maybe 8 or 10 cuts on there, and that's all you had of the movie. But now, when they have these collector's editions where they press them onto CDs, they come out with these 2 CD, 3 CD sets where you're getting alternate cuts. When you listen to it from beginning to end, you get kind of like fatigued. Empire, for some reason, I put that on. I listen from beginning to end, and it's just a strong score. You know,
Imperial March is just
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. They did a great one on Big Bang Theory where Sheldon was pissed off about something, and they come up to the door and they hear that music just blaring, and Leonard's just like, "Oh no, he's playing that music." he's mad.
I believe I heard John Williams say that the Imperial March was his favorite part of the.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
there
it's
were
great.
such strong themes in the movie. I mean, there was the Imperial March, there was Yoda's theme, and you had the love theme for Han and the Princess, and there were little incidental themes that he did for the droids at the beginning, like a little noodly kind of cute theme that he did, and Boba Fett had his own motif. You know, and the way he developed these through the movie, it's just really on its own. I would love to hear, you know, the last time I saw The Empire Strikes Back was on the big screen with an orchestra. I would love to hear it without the big screen. I just want the orchestra to play the score and just be able to sit there and listen to the music without the distraction of the visuals, actually. I think that would be really instructive.
Yep.
Maybe tickets wouldn't sell. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great score from beginning to end.
Just the visuals, but none of the dialogue.
Yeah, maybe
or
like
sound effects,
that's
just
true.
music.
Because you know the dialogue by heart anyway, so.
Exactly.
That's kind of what they did with Star Trek. Again, I keep jumping over there, but they did for the 50th anniversary. They did the was it the Czech National Orchestra or something like that? Did that?
They
tour.
toured the country for that.
And I went to see that in Boston, and they did all the music from all the shows and movies, and that's what they had, kind of a visual screen going up, and it was narrated by Michael Dorn, who'd come in and say certain things, but it was just spectacular to hear a live orchestra playing, you know, the fight music, you know, actually being played live was just, and they nailed it. I mean, it was exact. You'd almost swear it was a recording.
I got to see that in New York at Madison Square Garden. I went with Ryan, my son, and then also Shari and I went to see that. It was in Reading, Pennsylvania, and it was. And it's funny though, because while you're seeing the dialogue, especially from the or actually seeing the film and everything, especially from the original series, in our minds, and I'm sure you were doing this too, Mike. You were like reciting the dialogue because you know exactly what's going on, and then with the music. But they really knocked it out of the park.
It was totally worth
great.
every penny of the admission to that. They should do that with John Williams, not just Star Wars, all of John Williams stuff.
They did. The Boston Pops used to do it every now and again.
Because he has some phenomenal scores. I've mentioned this before. You know, Empire of the Sun is, of course, Jaws. I mean, you know, Raiders. I mean, it just and not just original Raiders, but I mean, all his scores for those 3 movies were brilliant. Particularly Last Crusade. I mean, the motorcycle chase alone is phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to go see a full concert with like clips from the movies and stuff. Would be just great. We're
got
off
to see-
track again.
Yeah, I got to see
Welcome
Last
to
Crusade.
Sci-Fi Distilled, Ross.
Where we
We were
That's
talking about
interesting.
Empire
Where we
Strikes Back.
diverge constantly.
But everybody knows the plot. That's the interesting part.
That's just it. We don't need to review
Everybody's
it too much.
lost.
Yeah.
So, side note, you mentioned so briefly in passing there, you're like, oh, Han and Leia had their music and da da da. Can I just say, like, how happy I am that it wasn't a mushy gushy relationship? Like, they were kind of constantly sniping at each other, and I was living for it. I love that about them. Like, that was like so, I don't know, so realistic, I guess. I don't
Too
know.
scruffy looking.
And kind of a throwback. You know,
I'd assume a kiss a Wookiee. I can arrange that.
because you know the famous cover art, the poster art with Han and Leia in the
Yeah,
Gone
she's
with the
like
Wind
laying back
pose.
or
Yeah.
something.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It was just you know and I think Lucas himself may have mentioned at some point he wanted like a Clark Gable, Vivian Leigh kind of thing going there between.
Well,
the
even
two
with
of them.
his relationship, I mean, he's essentially on his way down to the death. I mean, they don't know if he's going to survive it. And you know, she says, "I love you," and what is his response? He goes, "I know." You know, and he
Gangsta.
improvised that.
He's
That was
so gangster.
perfect.
Yeah.
But he was not supposed to survive. I think Lucas and Kasdan both wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
Like they were both like, okay, this character has had his run. He has no ties.
I think that would have
Let
been
it
a
go.
huge mistake had they killed
Well,
him.
it would have been a
I think
huge
that would
mistake,
not
but
have gone
then
over the fans.
what happened was merchandise and dollar bill y'all, and
Oh, yeah.
they just were like, you know what? I think we're gonna
What
keep
were they
him
gonna
around a
replace
little
him
longer.
with? I mean, that was the replacement, I guess. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I don't even, I know money is always the driving force, but I think, those are the things that somebody could kill a franchise by doing something stupid like that.
Yeah. Well, he hadn't signed a contract yet for the third one,
Nope.
so that was
Nope.
That was part of-
Carrie and Mark
Yeah.
had, but not Han.
Yeah,
Harrison hadn't.
yeah.
Well, we know that they're always playing, Hollywood plays these games, they know who's not going to sign, who wants more money. They're going to hold out. They hold out too long. The studio says, screw it, we can replace them.
Right.
I mean, we've heard this story repeated, name it a franchise, and, it keeps
Yeah.
happening.
Happened in
look
Star
at-
Trek, classic Star Trek. It
Carol
happened in
ended up-
Space 1999. It's
Yeah.
happened in a lot, everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the nature of that business. So, but I mean, from a fan's point of view, had they done something as
Ooh.
stupid as killing him off, which is
Yeah.
probably one of their popular.
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly, our three heroes only have like one scene together in the whole movie at the beginning.
Yeah.
At the beginning, yeah.
And then that's it. Then
In
they
the
all
med
go
bay.
their separate ways.
Yeah, in the med
Right.
bay. Yeah.
In the med bay.
Yep.
Which was another one of those misfire, weird writing. Definitely some like weird romance between Leia and Luke. Wait, that's not right. Like clearly they did not even.
Yeah, they didn't know yet.
They didn't know yet.
They got the free pass on that one.
But you know, one of the things I really like about this movie, and the first two movies in particular, or the whole original trilogy, but the first two movies especially, is that they, even though they had very serious, very dark things happen during the course of the movie, it still it didn't take itself too seriously. It was still a jokey movie. I mean, there was a lot of ponderousness and a lot of talk about the Force and all this weight of Vader being Luke's father and what have you, and him losing the hand and so forth. But they're calling each other like, laser brain and nerf herder, and
Yeah.
this is stuff even in the future or in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Nobody would call anybody a nerf herder. I mean, how lame is that for an insult? But it was just so tongue in cheek, you know. It was, and yet you're enjoying the adventure, you know.
Exactly. And Rush, you made a really good point. There's a lot of exposition, particularly about the Force, and it was a lot of it delivered by Yoda. But the way he spoke, the way he transposed and put his verb at the end of the sentence, that was actually deliberate and purposeful. And the reason why was to make you listen and actually have to think about what did he just say. So they knew the audience was getting that exposition that they needed us to get. Otherwise, we might have tuned out. Like if he had been speaking normally, I don't think he would have had the impact. You had to listen to him. You had to.
I never thought of that. Yeah, it would be, or you might confuse it with Miss Piggy. Yeah.
Because it was Frank, right? And you could recognize him.
Well, you
Or
heard a
Grover.
little bit of Fozzie Bear in
Or
I
Grover.
mean, it's clearly
Question
Frank.
about-
When you hear him talk, you're like, oh,
or
it's Frank.
Statler and Waldorf up in the balcony.
You definitely knew where he was coming from.
That's
You're
a
talking
really good
about
point.
Mark being able to, having seen Alone with the puppet, but at least he had the puppet to interact with. Whereas like in later films, when everything went CGI, they had like a stick,
Yes,
This is Yoda. Talk to
Here's
you
a
know what I'm
tennis
saying?
ball.
At least
Look up
they
at
had
it.
Frank
Yeah.
Oz doing his thing, you know what I'm saying, for him to interact with. So I think
Yeah.
that probably made, I bet you if you talk to them, it's like, oh yeah, it was much easier dealing with the puppet than it was a stick.
Well, I'm going to flash forward just for like 30 seconds just to say I remember reading an article about Liam Neeson for episode 1, and after doing Star Wars, he said he really needed a break. He would never do something like that again. And it's to your point, because you know, you're in front of green screens, you're not actually having a lot of the human contact, and it's a lot of the CGI. And that element of acting, it just really wore him down. So I mean, we'll forget about that, but just so it's so true.
As an actor to do that, you really have to imagine what's going on around you that's not real.
And Mark Hamill supposedly felt very drained just dealing with Frank Oz and essentially having a crew, and it was just the two of them. And with Frank Oz, I think they elevated the studio at a certain height just so that he could be beneath.
Yeah, so
he really didn't even have that contact. It's just he had the contact of this puppet, but the puppet was so lifelike, and he did such a fantastic job with it. It actually, the acting came through.
Yeah. No, that clearly. I mean, obviously, we know Frank Oz is when it comes to puppetry is a genius. So I mean, he's done so many things, and of course he's popped up in not as himself, but as an actor in a few movies. So Blues Brothers comes to mind right off the bat. I don't really know how he ended up in that film, but so did Steven Spielberg. So
you know what I just saw? Have you seen Knives Out? Ryan Johnson's murder mystery.
How is it?
It's well done, but I'm watching the movie. I said, who's the lawyer? Who is this guy? It's Frank Oz. He looks nothing like Frank Oz did 40 years ago. He's all white. Well, look, who's talking
I
here?
didn't know that.
Okay,
but
now
he turns
check that out.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting how he always shows up as these weird cameos in these films. Like,
our audience is having a different my dentist asked, Ross, are those books behind you? And I answered CDs.
Yeah,
and Phil's
CDs.
like, oh, they're all New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, very retro of me to have CDs, but I've been buying these for as long as who knows. I do a lot of radio work, so
yeah.
I was wondering if there were books or videos. Actually, my thought was.
Yeah, no DVDs. I've got videos over there too. All my books are in boxes over there. That's a whole other thing.
Print is dead.
Print is dead.
And so are CDs.
Or something in fungus.
So talking about funny moments in this movie, one of my favorites is when after Han has been tortured by the Empire, and they throw him in the jail, and he looks up, and he just, I feel terrible. I just thought that was one of the funniest moments because he's just like, it's so him, It's like, by the way,
delivered as only Harrison can.
They didn't ask me any questions. They just
there were so many great one-liners in this movie. I mean, that just pop up, and it just flows so natural. I mean, even the running gag as far as with the hyperdrive, it's like you really, by the end of the movie, you're thinking,
Well, it's funny because Lando says the same thing when it doesn't work.
Yep.
At the end, and he's like, "Not my fault.
Not my fault."
Yeah. So many memorable lines, so well written. I mean, so many quotable lines. I don't want to turn into a trashing of the other trilogies, but I can't think of any lines from the other film. I mean,
I completely agree.
Somebody growing up with them may remember them better than I do, but the same thing with the sense of fun I was talking about. I didn't get that from the other trilogies. I didn't get an attachment to the characters. Now, this might just be somebody growing up in the 70s and 80s, and I'm very familiar with the first trilogy, but
I agree with you with that, Ross, because I think even when we were watching this back in the day, there was an attachment to these characters. And even with people that have watched this film and, like with my son, he's 26. So he's, a bit older than when we saw these movies when they first came out. But still, even younger people, I don't hear the conversations. And again, it's a different generation too now. But the relationship with the characters or the connection to the characters, I don't think is there as on a stronger level, as strong a level. I mean, there might be Star Wars fans out there that are a lot younger that would beg to differ with that statement, but I think there is something more personable and more personal about these characters, especially for us. But I think even overall, as far as the movie, because they were groundbreaking and they were the original, but even still, they were relatable, and I think there was just a connection.
I think the
agree.
difference with our generation and like the current and younger kids is that they have so many things that they can go and watch.
True.
You know, we had that movie and then we had to wait 3-4
wait.
years for another one to come out. You know, so we focused. We were talking about when we were talking to you about Star Wars, you know, the albums that came out, you know, the story of Star Wars story. We had those and we played them till they were worn out. Because we didn't have anything else. There wasn't even any reruns. You couldn't even go rent the movie and watch it again.
I would lay on my bed after school and just listen to the album over and over again.
Well, what I would do is I bring my tape recorder into the movie theater and I would record the movie. Not to sell, but just to listen.
But I had that. I remember my sister like, "You're listening to that again." I mean, it was one of those little crappy. I didn't even have like a nice stereo. You know, I had one of these crappy suitcase style plastic phonographs that, you know, had a speaker about, you know, maybe that big on it. You know, and I'd listen to that thing, and I had my little figures. You know, you're acting it out. So yeah, I think that's part of the fact that we didn't have as much choice. And I'm not saying that we're better because of that or anything like that. I'm just saying it just was the reality, whether it was television or movies. You know, if it was a movie and you went out of the theater, you might have got to see it maybe 5 or 6 years later if it showed up on television. It seemed to take forever for a movie to go from the theater to a movie.
Right.
It's just,
right.
People are watching these things on their phones now.
Yeah, and
that's what's crazy.
now it's like,
I know.
literally like the day it's out of the theater, you can get the digital download of it.
Yeah.
Or and like same with television, you can access TV shows almost instantly at any time. So there's none of this. Like when I was, you know, it's like if you missed Happy Days on Tuesday night at 8:00 or whatever, and you missed that episode, you had to wait till the summer to catch it in reruns. If you missed that, well,
that's it.
Right.
Just to build a little bit on what Ross was just saying, where he said there's so many one-liners and everyone can quote it. It's not just that there are one-liners. Everything had a purpose. The action wasn't just action for action's sake. The action had a purpose. It forwarded the story and it built characters. Like Luke and Darth's duel at the end, which is iconic. Like when you see the silhouette against the blue, like you know exactly what that is. Yeah. Every moment of that duel forwards the story and adds to the story. It's not just wild action for the sake of wild action, which is what I kind of feel like you see a lot. Michael Bay, I'm looking at you. What I kind of feel like you're seeing a lot in movies nowadays. And
it wouldn't be a sci-fi film if it didn't have a giant chasm somewhere where somebody could fall.
Yes, also you need a chasm to fly
railing through. About this big.
And
what's interesting about Empire? What's interesting about the structure of Empire? You're talking about the action. This one actually has it's not a pre-credit sequence, but has an opening set piece that flows. It's in the movie. You know what I mean? It's usually with like Return of the Jedi, they have the separate thing with Jabba, or in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you have the separate thing where they raid the temple, and it's cool. I love it, but it introduces the character. But this one's actually part of the story. But the whole thing with Luke getting lost out there on patrol, it just flows effortlessly into the whole thing with the.
There's no wasted scenes. No
wasted scenes.
Well, and again, getting back to lines, it wasn't just funny lines. I mean, some of the classic lines that even I still still say all the time is impressive, most impressive. You know, when he jumps, flies up. You know, it's like I say all the time.
Well, it's like the Godfather. You know, we talk about great sequels, The Godfather and Godfather Part 2. People are still quoting, you know, the Godfather movies, and people are still quoting Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back all the time.
You don't get any better than that.
Yeah,
they really don't. Those two may be the two best sequels of all movies ever.
Yeah,
like the most well done sequels.
Yeah, and because traditionally sequels had a bad rap.
Yeah, and this one didn't do. Star Wars made $775 million. This one made $547 million. So it didn't, as in typical sequel fashion, it didn't quite make the mark of the original. But I think, you know what, hands down, it's withstood the test of time. I think it might be one of the best sequels ever of all movies, not just Star Wars, just ever.
Well, I think. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ross. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say it has the most. I think it has the most meat well, not more meat than The Godfather Part 2, but it has the most weight of a sequel. That you get into things like there were good science fiction sequels later, like Aliens and Terminator 2, The Judgment Day, which were great thrill rides, but they didn't really have the the gravitas of Empire. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and-
Where you felt like something was happening. You know?
Yeah,
And I'll
this
throw out.
introduced-
I'll
yeah.
even throw out Star Trek too. Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan.
Yes,
Over.
yes.
I mean, there's another example where the
But they're
second one
fun
was
movies.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
They're fun movies, but Empire just is kind of monumental in the culture.
You know, it's funny. I never thought of. I mean, it's obviously the second movie, but I never think of Wrath of Khan as a sequel to the motion picture because they really have nothing in common other than the cast.
True.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's like no thread. I mean, really, if you want to talk about Star Trek and that's a 4-part story because you had Space Seed, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and then finally Voyage Home. All one storyline. That's all connected.
One giant arc. Yep.
Yep. So anyway, we'll get off Star Trek. But getting what I was going to say about Empire, what you got basically really saying is that the great thing about it is we saw that just by blowing up the Death Star at the end of the first movie was not the end.
Yeah.
That they still had a long way to go. That was only one thing in the Empire's arsenal. It was a huge victory because now they didn't have that. But the fact is that they were still fighting for their lives and on the run after that. Hence, the Empire Strikes Back. So, you know, it wasn't until they were able to kill the Emperor that they actually got a real foothold. So I think
that was the scope.
That's what the part is so great about the movies. You realize that this story is still going on. That just because they blew up this thing, you know, the world is not all great.
No.
Yeah, it expanded the universe. It deepened the characters. You know, that mythic or archetypal, you know, father son. You know, the whole. Well, I guess it's not quite Oedipus, but because he wasn't in love with his mother, but like maybe his sister. But you had the whole father son dynamic.
It was almost very, very
a lot of resonance.
What's the word?
Greek.
It was very,
Greek.
very Shakespearean in some ways, where
Yeah.
you know the whole father, and it turns out, and he has to try to redeem his father in the end, which he does in Jedi at the very end. But
it's still very much a piece of pop culture too. That's what's great. It's not pretentious, you know. It's great. It's just it's a fun adventure. It's got the different levels. But it's a blast to watch this thing. It's got the Harryhausen tributes with the stop motion with the tauntaun. Or how about the space slug? I mean, you can't take a movie seriously with this the space slug. I mean, it's great. It's like you have the stuff with okay, they get all beat up and Luke loses his hand and you know everything's dark and terrible.
Was that because you know. You know that
and plus it wasn't a happy ending when that movie ended. It left you wanting more. So I mean, it was
absolutely,
and that was huge because you know what, when you left the theater you were like, oh my god, when's the next one going to come out? It's going to be another probably 2 to 3 years and we're going to have to wait. In the meantime, he was brilliant because with the merchandising and everything, he held on to the merchandising. They were going over budget when they filmed this movie. And he had to renegotiate with 20th Century Fox to try to get more money, which he did. But he wanted to hold on to his merchandising rights because he saw that was going to be his funding, and that's how he became so successful.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, being out there looking for the first 12 action figures for Star Wars, and the Jawa was the one that you couldn't find anywhere, and they had the Jawa that had the cloth, and then the one that didn't. And everybody wanted it. And then, we were talking earlier about, Boba Fett, how cool it would be to get that ahead of time. I mean, Lucas was a genius when it came to that.
And Kenner, have you ever watched this? There's a Netflix show, The Toys That Made Us. And the first one they did is Star Wars, and how Kenner, with this little tiny company, was put on the map because of Star Wars toys. And it's a really good watch if you haven't seen it.
Because they were the only ones that bought into it, right?
They were the only ones. They were the ones that said they would do it. Now, Mattel, I think, was originally approached. If I remember, you watched the show. Mattel was originally approached, and they were like, "No, we don't want to do it, or I don't think there's any money in it, or whatever." They kind of passed on it, and Kenner said, "We'll do it." Kenner was like literally like a mom and pop toy company. I mean, they were like nothing then.
Wow.
And eventually, I think it did change hands in the 90s. Kenner eventually couldn't keep up, or I don't remember exactly. If you watch the show, it explains all that stuff. But
they retired and they're living on an island somewhere.
Yeah, probably. Who knew? But they couldn't produce, as we know, they couldn't produce the toys in time for Christmas.
They couldn't
do it.
Star Wars,
no way. So you remember they had the certificate.
Yep.
That you would get.
Star Wars,
parents could buy. It was like $25 or something, which is a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
78, 70, 79. And $25, I think, and they'll send you like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 of them. I don't remember how many it was, but but it wasn't until March, I think I remember, until you actually got the thing.
So you got to wait.
Yeah, you got the certificate and you sent it in, and then they would, when they had them available, they mailed you the figures or something.
And then the pressing would run out and you get a different Han, like his head kept changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that they all looked a little different. Like people have multiples and they'd be like, they all are a little bit different. So Ross was just mentioning the special effects, and I know Roy was lucky enough to talk to Brian Johnson last Sunday. I gotta say, rewatching a lot of this footage, the effects hold up. Like they really hold up. Hoth, the whole Battle of Hoth,
Oh yeah.
still looks amazing to this day.
40 years later.
Incredible.
They shot
Incredible.
that in Switzerland, Sweden, somewhere.
Norway.
And it was
Norway.
like the worst.
Norway.
It was like the
And-
coldest.
Yeah,
worst.
and I remember watching one of the things, and they said like all the extras were Norwegian. Like the guys that were the rebels fighting, and they're like, they didn't speak any English, so the guy'd be like, no, do this, like, so it's funny. Like, he's trying to do because they couldn't speak any English at the time, so it was kind of fun. Probably now you go to Norway, they all speak English, because it seems like all Europeans do. But
Yeah.
Brian Johnson was saying that there was 104 elements or optical effects mats that they used for that asteroid sequence just to make that
Oh
happen.
yeah, the asteroids. And weren't there like potatoes and shoes and things in there because they just couldn't?
That's what they say. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, supposedly there's a potato and a shoe in the asteroid field.
I've never spotted it.
I never did either.
Probably so small you wouldn't notice. I remember when I was a kid, I was in junior high, took a film class, and everybody wanted to do those things. And of course, we always had an asteroid field after that the ship had to go through. I mean, like that was like a
Because
state.
they wanted. Oh, but that's what that was how the effects improved in Star Wars. If you go back and watch Star Wars, the Falcon pretty much only ever makes straight passes.
Mm.
And when you watch it in Empire, it finally does things. It turns and flips.
Yeah, it
and
gets a
goes,
little bit more jiggy.
Yeah, it gets a little more jiggy with it. Yeah.
And that was
It's a
models. That
squirrel.
wasn't CG.
Yeah.
That wasn't CGI.
Oh, that was
so-
all
And that's all. Yeah, that's
Well,
all.
it's kind of
model
like
work.
what Mike and Doug or Mike Okuda was saying when we were talking about 2001, that those visual effects, I said how great they still hold up, but he's like, you ever notice that those visual effects are always very linear?
Yep.
The ships are only going in one direction. There's no.
Yeah.
Well, I remember Doug saying that on the show because he was saying now with the Orville, he's in the 3rd season that it is CGI and there's so much more that you can do with the ship
sure.
as that you're not as limited.
But he also said that Seth MacFarlane had them build an actual Orville model just because he
Right.
has the clout.
Because it's Seth. Yeah.
Fox to pay
Which
for
is
it.
cool.
I don't know what they're going to do with it. I assume they'll try to shoot it, but
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the cool
Good
things.
stuff.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
You were saying. Well, one of the cool things about the special effects, also, they up the ante on everything. I mean, the first film you have that magnificent, breathtaking shot the first time you see the Star Destroyer going over the camera. But this one you see multiple Star Destroyers. You know what I mean? And by Return of the Jedi, how many TIE fighters were in that? It's a trap. How many of the how many ships did they work into? Every time they had to crank it up a little more.
oh, sure.
And the
They
Imperial
also
Star
probably had a bigger
Destroyer
budget each
was
time too.
Yeah.
the Imperial Star Destroyer that they had in this was incredible too. Vader's ship. I mean, that thing
Right.
was
The
huge and it was
Executor.
beautiful.
Executor.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's called.
Yes.
Yes, the Executor. Which gets destroyed, which actually is what kind of, I shouldn't say it does it. It starts to do in the second Death Star. Remember, it crashes right into it.
Yeah,
Shows
they
you
crash.
the size of the Death Star.
Massive ships.
Yeah,
They
'cause it's
have
a big
to fly
giant ship and
this
it's only
close to
just
each other.
sticking into this giant other.
Couldn't they space apart a little bit? Just like every time that awooga crash siren is going off on those ships, you're like, don't you guys ever like?
I know. Pay
okay.
attention to where you're going.
They have the
flying.
whole universe to play, but they're right there on top of each
They're
other.
always right on top of each other. Well, it makes for good film.
Oh,
You know, one thing I gotta
why-
bring-
That's why. Aren't the stormtroopers like kind of no not like red shirts. The stormtroopers always miss. So I guess that tells you a lot about the entire Empire as a whole.
Yeah, well, that's always the joke. They can't hit anything.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can't
and
hit
what-
anything.
They're supposed to be sharpshooters, but they
The
can't hit
ships
anything.
crash and the guys can't shoot.
Well, what about the Imperial Walkers, where they have the 2 little guns on the front, or whatever it is, the turrets in the front? They have these big lumbering elephantine machines that are totally impractical. Anytime that what do you call the little ships? You guys will know.
Snow
Yeah,
speeders.
yeah.
The snow
Yeah,
speeders.
yeah. They go whipping by, and they got to turn around to shoot the with the little guns. And then they have the chicken walker.
Yeah.
Chicken.
The two-legged one. You know, it's interesting you talk about the walker. I think I mentioned this book in another. There's a book called it's an anthology called, I think, Stories from the Empire or something like that. And they actually have a story of an imperial officer who basically saw the flaw in the walkers, that they could easily be tripped and destroyed, but it was like a whole underlying conspiracy that they basically they like there was like rebels or something that had, like, they knew that was purposely, they weren't going to tell anybody that this is the stupidest thing ever. These things can be just tripped and knocked over. Like, why would you think legs are a good idea? And it's kind of interesting, but I really recommend those books. There's like a series of books where they're like stories from the Mos Eisley Cantina and stories from the Empire, and I think there might be one more. And they're just all little short stories about different, like the Cantina one's great because it takes every single alien that's in that cantina and gives you their backstory.
Oh, cool.
And how they ended up there on that day.
Is that what Seth Green built Robot Chicken off of? Because he has
Maybe. I don't know I don't know that I don't know.
You gotta watch it. It's hilarious, but it's
yes,
good.
but if you ever want to know all the backstories to all those different weird aliens, you know, the twin women and the guys with the, yeah.
Is it canon, or do they retrofit it?
Oh, no, as most people will tell you, well, no novels are canon.
Yeah.
So, like with Star Trek, anything that happens in a book does not.
Oh, I don't know. I thought, didn't Mara Jade come up in the novels, and they've decided to keep her? I think she's going to come up in.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't take things from the novels. I'm just saying as canon, it doesn't. I mean, we've talked about that. For me, once they got done with Empire, they should have took Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire and used that as the next trilogy.
Probably. Yeah.
Why they should have, but I don't know, because those were just three great books that just really took the story, continued it, to my opinion, and brought in new characters. One of them being, I believe, Mara Jade. So
interesting.
Very cool.
Interesting.
What about the
whole?
whole?
That's what we're all about here. Interesting.
What about the whole experience of going to see this in a theater back then? Do you remember what theater did you see it in back in 1980?
For me, it was the same movie. I mean, pretty much for my entire childhood was the Showcase Cinemas in Orange, where I grew up, off I-95 in Connecticut. I mean, it was like 7 theater.
Oh, were there that many screens at that point?
Wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty big facility in our town. It was right off I-95, so it was like where everybody in the whole southern Connecticut would go to watch a film. And I think I'd mentioned they were one of the places that actually had a theater big enough for CinemaScope. Mm-hmm. So the few movies that would come out and CinemaScope, you go, was always Theater 1 was the big one. It was huge. And they'd always do that when they'd do a CinemaScope movie. They'd have curtains. They actually had curtains in front of the screen.
Right.
Show the regular 16:9, and then as the thing would open up, it would say in CinemaScope, and the curtains.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Speed as the thing would expand. So you have, there goes Robbie.
Oops.
Don't knock it over.
Robbie.
Danger.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, Robbie. I'll move you back over there out of the way. It's because I'm Italian and I move.
Oh, that was the forbidden hand, Robbie. Sorry.
Ross,
But anyway, I don't. So I saw all 3 movies in that same theater.
Okay.
How old were those theaters, Mike?
They had been around since the 70s. They got knocked down. They got that place has been redone. The whole area has been redone because I still go there. My parents are still alive and live in the same house I grew up in. But they right next, it's kind of weird because it was right on the town line, West Haven, and right over the line in West Haven, Connecticut. And this is way longer answer than you wanted to know. But there was a big pharmaceutical company. I can't think of the name of it, but it was like a city, and they needed that land where that theater was to expand. So they bought that. They built another theater on the other side of the road. And then since then, that one's been knocked down, and they built another bigger
one.
Wow. So I would say it was probably built in the early 70s or late 60s, the original one.
We had the movie theater that was called the Easton Eric, and then there was the Eric that was in Allentown.
Right.
And Did you see it up in Allentown, Ross, or did you see it in?
I saw it up,
Easton?
and this is why I asked, because it was a big deal back then. People were still actually lining up around the block to see these
Yeah.
movies. You don't see that anymore. Well, they have midnight showings and things now where people come in costume. But immediately when we got out of school on that Wednesday, my uncle took my friend Matt, who's always on your commenting on your show, Roy, and I up there, and we stood in line until the first showing of Empire Strikes Back on that day, and yeah, everybody was just pumped in line. I did now, Mary Beth. I'm sorry I didn't ask you because Roy says you're younger than us. Did you see it in the theater?
I was just sitting here trying to remember as you guys were speaking about that. So it was 1980. I would have been 9. I don't think my parents would have let me just go unsupervised or go with friends unsupervised. I would have had to have been with them. So I just don't remember. I don't have a clear memory of when I first saw it. I have a very clear memory of it ending and Luke and Leia standing there in the window and he's got his arm around her and the music. And I just remember being like, what about Han? Like being like, what? I remember all that, but I don't remember where I saw it. I don't think it would have been at my local theater. My local theater was only like a 3-screener. It was tiny, and old.
Yeah, I know we were pretty lucky to have that pretty large, modern for the time theater.
The East and Eric only had 2 theaters, and then for the longest time, and then what they did was, I think it was sometime in the 80s, they expanded it to 4. They built 2 smaller theaters, but they had the one theater, which was the Eric one, which was the smaller one, and then the Eric 2 they would have for the big crowds. And then there was no multiplexes, and then there was another theater called the Budco, which was at the 25th Street Shopping Center, which was very close to where Ross lived.
And the State.
And then the State Theater,
which was a movie palace. It was one of the old movie palaces. We still had one in Easton. Yeah.
They wanted to knock it down at one point. Unfortunately, they petitioned, and there's a lot of history there, which is
didn't
really
show any
cool.
Star Wars, unfortunately, but they did show Battlestar Galactica. But
I saw Battlestar Galactica in Sense-Around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was in Sense-Around.
That was a big thing. The only other movie I could think of that was in Sense-Around was like Earthquake.
Right. There were only 4 of them. There was Earthquake, Sense-Around, Roller Coaster, Battlestar Galactica. And what was the 4th one? Anybody know in the comments section? I can't. I'm not reading the comments.
Quiz. This is your quiz, guys.
They're saying what theaters they went to.
What was the 4th Sense-Around?
What was it? The disaster movies? Was it the Towering Inferno, Earthquake?
It was Towering Inferno.
Earthquake. Yeah, it was just.
I
know it was Earthquake and Battlestar. I didn't even know about the roller coaster one.
Roller coaster, and there's a 4th one, but maybe somebody they'll Google it.
Yeah. All Sense-Around was subwoofers.
Right. Yeah.
Invention of the subwoofer that they added to the theater.
Yeah,
it made everything really vibrate.
Yeah, it would still mess with the stability of the plaster would still fall from the ceiling. But yeah. Now, do you remember also you could sit through showings back then still? So if you went to see The Empire Strikes Back, you could sit through the credits and then watch it again. Yep. Yeah. I remember the first time anybody ever asked me to leave.
I don't remember that. They would have booted you out for.
Yeah.
No, back then you could stay. They never,
Wow,
yeah. That I think started to change when the movies got to the point where they couldn't I remember when E.T. came out and that was so popular. That was the first time I went to the theater and couldn't get in. I could not get it. They're like, well, you can, and it was the first time I've ever prepaid for a ticket that wasn't for a showing for hours, let alone the days. Now they pre-sale all this stuff.
Yeah.
I remember they're saying, well, we have room in the 2 o'clock. We're at there for the 12:30 or something. We got room at the 2 or 2, whatever it was. If you want to buy a ticket now for that. And luckily this was at a smaller cinema right off the post road. I know Fez is going to know what I'm talking about because Fez grew up in the same area I did. Another smaller cinema that was in the parking lot of a big mall. So you're like, okay, we'll just buy our ticket and then we'll go to the mall and hang out for
and kill time, and then
But I mean, I think a lot of that changed when those movies were getting so popular that you couldn't sit there. They're like, no, we got people come, another full house, But yeah, I do remember that you could just sit there and spend all day watching the same movie over and over.
Plus the multiplexes, I think, really changed that now because I mean, they have so many different types of showings. I think the last movie that I got bumped on that I actually remember having to wait was the Batman movie, and that was in June of '89 when that came out. we actually went up to like a midnight showing and they were sold out.
Yeah, and
Had
the
to, had to
really
wait till like,
the really
Oh, I
big
was
theaters, they'll have the same movie on 2 screens. So
Right.
it's not like every hour on the hour you can see this thing.
And
Yeah.
they're still doing that with popular. I mean, I remember when I went and saw Phantom Menace when it came out, I saw that opening night. It was a midnight show, and it was, I was living in Florida at the time, and they had these massive. It was a huge multiplex theater in a mall. You know, it was like literally in the mall, and they had, I don't know, 12 theaters or something, and they were literally showing it in all 12 theaters. So, you know, we're all lined up in the mall, sitting down. The mall's closed because it's midnight showing, so there's nothing open. And it was like right off the food court. And I remember sitting there with a whole bunch of people, and like we're all like, you know, one guy, I forgot what all these restaurants are closed, and one manager was like brilliant and like, we're gonna stay open because there's all these people sitting there that can like, eat food because we got there like, you know, because it was, you know, first come first serve for seating. So we got there like 10 o'clock or something after a midnight show, or maybe 9:30. So we're sitting there. So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy what you do now. I don't think I would do that today in a movie.
So, okay, so shifting gears because we've been talking about the theater. To welcome Ross as Roy's new Friday night host, and to get to know him, and to welcome him to the fray and the cray, because that's us. And Ross, you'll end up at the set tour eventually. Like all roads lead to the set tour, really. So you'll end up there eventually. But to welcome you, we want to get to know you. So I have a little lightning round questions for you. Just shoot the first thing that comes off the top of your head.
Okay.
Okay. This one's right up your wheelhouse. Best use of classical music in a sci-fi movie or TV show.
Oh boy, I'm not a quick. Zardoz. The Beethoven and the Zardoz.
Classical, do you mean a piece that was created?
I mean, yes, like in 2001 when they used
interesting story
right.
how that all came about.
All right. Okay. All right. 2001, it would be first. I don't know if Clockwork Orange counts as science fiction.
Oh, sure it does.
Sure.
You know, and Zardoz. They seem to, in the early 70s, they seem to have a good grasp of how to use classical music.
All right. If you could bring back any canceled show or continue any movie series, which one would it be?
Oh man, I should add some more caffeine before I started this.
I'd bring back Fringe.
Wait, nothing like, you know, kind of ambushing somebody.
Cancel. Wait.
Say Firefly.
Yeah, I have never seen Firefly.
Well,
but
watch it and then say Firefly.
Watch it and then say Firefly.
There are a couple shows where they just can't. Oh, Night Stalker. How about that?
Oh, good choice.
Yeah. The original Night Stalker. Sure.
Okay.
1974.
Two more questions. Of any TV or movie universe, which one would you want to be? If you could put yourself in that world, which one would you go into? I would go visit Harry Potter because I want to see what that's all about.
TV or movie world?
TV or movie universe, yep.
Where would I want to be?
We know where Roy would go.
I know where Roy would go, yep.
Into the moon.
I don't know.
Before or after it explodes.
Or the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Maybe the Adventures of Robin Hood.
Robin Hood.
Nice.
That'd be
Good
cool.
choice. Which of the many, like Errol Flynn?
Errol Flynn, of course. Errol Flynn.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, last question. Do you like pineapple on your pizza?
I would eat it, but it's not something I order. But I'll eat anything except the anchovies.
It was a trick question because if you put pineapple on a pizza, it ceases being a pizza.
No, it doesn't. It's still pizza.
Is this an ongoing thing here?
No.
Just tonight.
Everything is in Italian.
No, I'm just torturing you tonight.
Yeah, I don't usually order pineapple on the pizza.
Good call.
No.
But I would eat it.
All right, man. Welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi. I'm looking forward to watching you guys every Friday night.
Roy is
thanks,
very
man.
kind to ask me to do
It's
this.
been fun. I've enjoyed all your shows so far.
Yeah, you know, we hadn't talked to each other in 35, 36 years and or 34 years. And I guess it's just like no time has passed. It's weird.
Yeah, we just kind of caught up. In fact, we got together about maybe 3 weeks ago, Ross?
We distance visited in a park.
Yeah. Met for lunch. So it was kind of cool.
Just like sitting apart and then kind of.
Yeah, we sat at opposite ends of a picnic table and brought our lunches. Yeah.
But yeah, it felt like time just, was suspended.
Oh yeah.
There's so much that we could talk about with The Empire Strikes Back, and I'm sorry if we got diverted on.
Well, that's
No,
what we do.
that's fine.
That's what we do.
I did want to
you
say.
know what?
What? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how Mary Beth is actually the one that came up with all roads lead to Star Trek. So
No,
that was
I
her.
did.
It might have been Rizzo.
Oh.
It might have been Rizzo, but
stole
I
it.
kept saying it.
All right, so
Stole it.
Mike originated it. Mary Beth stole it, and then I stole it from Mary Beth. So there we go. But I also came up with all roads lead to Space 1999. 3 of the admirals that were in this movie were in Space 1999 episodes. It was Michael Culver, it was Julian Glover,
Yes.
and then Michael Sherd. The 3 of them were in Space 1999, and they were all Imperial, admirals.
Yes.
And they all
Glover
died.
died
There's
a lot of
not-
death too, didn't he?
There's several connections with in this one with James Bond as well, and Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So the
Julian
guy
Glover.
that was the colonel, not the colonel, the guy that was basically commanding the ground forces was in,
Julian Glover.
was not only he was a bad guy in
Oh, right. The third.
both
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade and in
Right.
For Your Eyes Only.
For Your
He was
Eyes
in,
Only,
the
thank
James
you.
Bond movie.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
so there's all kinds of connections in these
It's
films.
really cool.
Yeah.
We always figured that Spielberg and Lucas wanted to do excuse me, James Bond. So
So there's a
Yeah,
time.
he did. He did
Right,
want to do it.
right.
Yeah.
In fact,
For-
Michael Sherd, that was one of the admirals, was in the calendar that's behind me from the Space 1999 episode Dragon's Domain, and he actually met his fate with the dragon. So 1999 fans can see him on that.
definitely. So.
I-
So
I
I
did-
think any last final we're past the 8:00 hour. Not that I really worry about it, but
Yeah, there's only one other thing I wanted to say, and that's that one of the things that made The Empire Strikes Back so exciting is that it really opened up the Star Wars universe. And really, you like you said, you saw that it was much bigger than the Death Star, but also the scope. We had all these other weird planets. I was hoping in the third film, because they'd gone to all these other places, that we wind up on a water world or something, because we hadn't yet been to something like that. But whereas The Empire Strikes Back just opened everything wide open. It seemed to be the opposite when we got to the third one, Return of the Jedi. Everything kind of contracted. We had another Death Star. Instead of Wookiees, we had Ewoks. Instead of land speeders, we had the speeder bikes or what have you. It seemed like they somehow, I can't see how this would be, but it was almost like they were recycling ideas already. In
They
the
did
third.
live up to their potential.
Tatooine right from the get-go. So we're back on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Tatooine obviously played a very important role, at least in Lucas's head, throughout all of the series, because it kept repeating back to that same planet. We're always back on Tatooine. He liked the desert, I guess. I don't know.
It really came full circle, and I mean that's a totally different movie. But this, I would agree. It's like there was so much hype, and that's the difficulty with doing a sequel, because you're trying to measure up, and I think that's what makes this movie so great, is that it actually did measure up. And I mean, story wise, I think this was the strongest story. Star Wars was the adventure story. I mean, as far as the action, the adventure, and the boy that becomes a hero and is resonated throughout the entire movie, and then the good guy defeats the bad guy, or at least it's like a victory won but not the war, like you were saying too, Mike, about that, because it's on such a bigger scope. But this movie Empire Strikes Back just really hit that mark and just kept going, whereas you're expecting so much with the third movie, and not to spoil your listeners for the next time, but it's just that just didn't feel like it came down and hit that. It didn't hit that mark, and it just it was successful, and it was powerful.
Yeah,
but it was a different type of movie.
Yeah, I think it was. I like the film. Let's think of it as Star Wars for adults a little bit, because it had a little bit more not an adult theme to it, but it has, like you said, it was more serious. There was the jokes, but I think it had more meat to it, as we already kind of talked about. So I think that's what I think people really think it's when they talk about the films as a film and not what your gut tells you, because I still love the original the most.
Right.
It is, I think, a better film overall. It's just the story just works better. The dialogue works better. There's more background to the characters. We find it, what I'm saying? There's just more to it.
It's more character driven.
And I still wonder whether Han got upset that Lando used his clothes while he was frozen.
I know we didn't talk about Lando at all.
For him, you know, you never notice it's the same outfit. He's wearing the exact same outfit. So.
Yeah, he is.
But you know, when it ended, as a kid and watching that in the theater, when it ended, and that you say that scene, you know, you kind of see this galactic spiral, and the Millennium Falcon is, you know, undocks and flies away, and you're like, and you're like, oh crap,
you wanted more.
I gotta
wait
like 3-4 years to find out what the hell happens.
Yes,
you know, you were just like, damn them for leaving it as a cliffhanger.
But that was so smart on their part, because
absolutely. I mean, part of what makes the movie so great is like, you know, but it was an impact. You were just like, this is it. This is it. but Han,
yeah,
he's frozen.
Do that.
Gotta go get him. Which is what I love that in Mandalorian, by the way, that they used the carbonite freezing.
Yeah, they did.
He has all these guys stored in his closet.
I love the Mandalorian.
He's going through guys in carbonite. Do you remember going to Spencer Gifts when you were younger and going through the movie posters?
The movie posters.
Guys in carbonite. We used to go through movie posters.
There's that guy. Yeah, it's like this frozen there.
Just going through them. Oh yeah, there's that
Favreau is a genius when it comes. He's really, to me, a lot of ways saving this franchise.
He is, and Filoni is doing an amazing job too.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, I've seen the last 3 films. I've not been happy with the last 3 films, and not that I want to be trash and everything. We try to keep things positive, but I saw Mandalorian, and I'm like,
yes,
thank you.
You have to have Disney to see this, right?
Yeah, it's on Disney.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
It's so worth it.
All I get are little baby Yoda memes.
Yes, just pay $10 for 1 month. Watch. It's worth $10.
It's well worth it.
There's other stuff.
Half-hour episodes, so you can.
You can rip through it in no time. It's worth it. It's worth it to me. That's really what I did. I wanted to just watch that. I got it for the month. I waited till like they were 3 or 4 episodes in. And then I paid for it, and then I caught up, and then I was able to watch and cancel it.
Yeah. I watch it in Royce.
While you have it, watch a bunch of Marvel, because they've got all the Marvel stuff there.
Got all the Marvel, yeah. If you like other stuff, but you know, so
yeah.
But
I actually got it by default because of Horizon.
Rogue One was another shining light in the franchise.
Rogue One should have been that movie should have been one of the independent movies. I mean, it could have been one of the standalone. It is a standalone Star Wars movie, but it could have been actually one of the 3 that they made for the new series. I thought that movie was probably better than all the 3 that they did.
On
7,
levels.
8, and 9.
On several levels. One, it got back to the original universe where the Empire hadn't been, you know, that we didn't have to recreate all these bad guys. 2, it had original characters, so we didn't have to, other than the fact they stuck in the few CGI, you know, Grand Moff Tarkin and Leia, and obviously Vader, but you can put anybody in a Vader suit. And it was original characters and original story, but it was still put in that older universe. Yeah. And I think, and they did so many things right with the look of it. They copied the lighting effects and everything from the original films that just, for us older guys, were like,
it was a wonderful tribute.
It was such a nostalgia trip. And even in the music, but without quoting John Williams, he somehow kind of suggested that in all of the textures of the orchestration and everything. Yeah, it was very clever. Yeah.
And the humor in it, you know, and it was, you know, the robot there was hysterical.
Right.
Just did a great job.
You cared about those characters. That was the other thing too. You really did.
Strong female character, which was great.
Yeah.
You know, it just, the whole
thing was really good.
Just well done. And I think I saw it at least 3 times in the theater, which I never do anymore. I mean,
we saw it twice, but it was
I mean, I just never do that. You know.
That was
I like the one-offs better than the trilogies myself. Yeah, the new trilogy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, we got to talk about next week, Mary Beth.
Oh.
So next week we're revisiting our. Hang on, let me get it up.
Yes, we're revisiting the new concept that Roy inspired.
Yeah, this is we're doing Make Me Watch It Again. Make Me Watch, and this time we're doing with Kent Schmidt. We're doing Space Battleship Yamato, which was basically the live action of Star Blazers from the
Star Blazer. So if you ever watched the Star Blazer cartoon, so this is,
you guys that haven't watched it, I have watched this already, and so I won't talk about it. because I had not seen it. Mary Beth is the one that had seen this one.
Yes.
So I'm on the hot seat. I think, had Kent seen it prior? Or has he seen...
I don't know if he'd seen this particular version, but he's watching Yamato 2199 right now. So
Okay. So so that's going to be our show next week.
that's our show next week. I will repost the link. That movie, Space Battleship Yamato, is free on YouTube. I will post the link to YouTube so you guys can all watch it
very
too.
Good. It's
and
not
we'll all talk about it together.
It's a good
And Roy, if you can tell us, I know you've got a very special show coming up on Sunday, but if you could tell us what you've got going on Friday and Sunday.
Oh, sure. Thanks. So Friday night, Ross and I are going to be talking about the 1953 classic film, War of the Worlds.
Wow.
So we're going to be talking about that, and that should be really interesting. This is going to be actually our first 1950s movie. Incidentally, it's funny, when episode 1 of this show, we started out with the One Step Beyond. In fact, Captain Phil was my first guest co-host. That show actually had started in 59 and went till 63. So there's so many movies that are in the 50s, because originally I was doing the 60s and the 70s, but it was kind of limiting. So I thought, you know what? I want to kind of go back a little bit, because I know you guys are doing the 80s and the 90s and going and beyond. So kind of went the other way. So with that, that's going to be on Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Ross and I will be doing that. Sunday is going to be the 30th episode of Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. And what this is going to be is this is going to be a special episode where the people that are watching the show will have the opportunity to be on the show. So if you're interested and you would like to be on just for a few minutes, what I want to do is I want to open it up so that the viewers can come on, and all you need to do is have a Zoom, basic Zoom account, so you don't have to pay for that or anything. Just download it for free. And then what I'll do is I will send you the invite through that, and you can come on and just say hello to fellow viewers, or, and then also tell us about yourself, where you live, and then also what your favorite science fiction, either movie or television show is. And then that way everybody gets to see you. And then, the fans and the viewers can kind of like see who's, watching, because everybody, like on Sci-Fi Distilled, is always like texting and messaging, and, you're communicating that way. So that way everybody will get to see everybody. And it'll just be for, a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes for each person. So you don't have to worry or be shy, and just, say hi. And
Roy, that is a fantastic idea. That's a great idea, because I've gotten to know like a whole bunch of new people, like through Roy's Sci-Fi. I just got to meet Ross. I've got to know a bunch of new people through your show. And I hope they've gotten to know a bunch of us through this show. So
yeah, that's what's nice about the crossovers.
Great idea.
Thanks. So yeah, very excited. And I want you guys to come on too and do that too. So,
this is Sunday, this Sunday?
This will be Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And just to let you know, let your viewers know too, that in the near future, we just have to iron out the dates. You guys are going to be coming over to crossover with us, and we will be talking about a classic from 1956, which is Forbidden Planet. So stay tuned.
Planet, iconic.
Yes.
Monsters from the Id. There he is.
There he is.
There he is. He's ready.
So the 4 of us will be talking about that. That is a cool Robbie.
Monsters from the
Walmart.
Id.
That's the Walmart.
Was it?
Robbie,
The
right?
Walmart one, 20 bucks.
Go to
Can't beat
Walmart.
it.
Get that Robbie.
And it walks.
Yes, if you're interested in being on, just message me or message Roy Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, just so that I know, and then I will get that out to you for Sunday
And we
show.
will be reminding everybody all week long.
Yeah,
So we'll...
yeah, it's a lot of time.
That sounds
All
great.
right.
Yep.
Well,
Cool. Thank you guys.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us, as always. We'll certainly
thank
have
you.
you back. And we'll look forward to obviously joining you for Forbidden Planet, and possibly on Sunday for a shout
For a
out.
quick hi.
Not that I think they're probably sick of seeing us, though, right?
Yeah, they've seen enough of us. They know who we are.
Ah.
Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
being
Thank you
here.
for
Really
coming on.
appreciate it. So,
This was
all right,
fun.
guys, everybody stay safe, separated, wear your mask. Remember,
Yeah.
bail.
Be safe.
So, bye-bye.
Take it.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.